So today we'll talk about another UK company called Howden Joinery. And Howden Joinery is primarily a it works only with the trades, and we'll talk about how that dynamic works in just a moment. But a brief overview is they have about a £5 billion market cap. The PE ratio looking forward over the next 12 months, based on analyst estimates, is about 19 times. They're based in London. They have a net cash position of about 343 million pounds. They have no financial debt. They do have operating leases that they pay, but there's no financial debt. So on a net cash basis, about 343 million pounds. Most of their depots are based in the United Kingdom, 871, along with 78 internationally. Most of these are found in France, but also in Belgium and the Republic of Ireland. So one of the things that makes Howden Joinery very unique, which we just mentioned, is it has a focus on the trade customer. In the US, we might call these the pro customers. So if you followed Lowe's or Home Depot, you know that they're focused more increasingly on these pro customers and less on the DIY customers. And so Howden's is really focused on that customer base, just the pro customer. They won't work, like if you came in as a consumer and wanted to buy from them, you cannot do it. They only work with trade customers. And we'll talk about the advantage of that in just a moment. They also have vertically integrated supply. So that as well. So their supply chain, part of it is manufactured by them. So they control the process, which comes in handy when you have some geopolitical tensions and manufacturing disputes. They also have a depot-led operation. So it's a decentralized model. So decisions happen at the local level rather than at the corporate level. And that gives them an advantage over some of their peers. Finally, their depot managers, and this is what really got me interested in the name, is that their depot managers and their staff share in the depot's profitability. So the depot manager and all the staff have a monthly bonus scheme, but based on gross margin and operating margin. And so they can get monthly bonuses based on how well they're performing. So they have buy-in. And I don't mention it in the slides, but they also have 100% employee stock ownership. So there is a strong alignment with shareholders. As you can see on the right, 90% of their business comes from residential. That these are mostly you know, apartments, flats in the UK, houses, kitchens. These are not mostly commercial. Now there's some non-residential, but most of it's residential. And 95% of that business is repair, maintenance, and improvement. So there's very little exposure to new construction. That's always a concern, is how much are they tied to home builders? The typical customer is a landlord, perhaps, who is ready to upgrade the flat, trying to increase rents. That might be a key driver, for example, or just a homeowner who wants to refresh their kitchen after a couple of years, or if they've just bought a new house and want to freshen it up. So I mentioned the depot model, and you can see a diagram of it on the left. This is what their depots look like in the UK. They're about 10,000 square feet, or approximately the same size as a dollar store in the US. So if you're trying to get a perspective of how big these stores are. So not very big. And you can see they have a lot going on in a relatively small space. And most of it is warehouse. You can see the warehouse material there. These are all flat pack. So when they build kitchens for their customers, they come in flat packs. So think of IKEA, for example, walking through their warehouse as you leave. That's generally what Howden's warehouse looks like. And so it makes it very convenient for their tradespeople to come in, get what they need, and get out. You can see the dock where the commercial provider is backing their van in, getting filled with in the trunk with all of their supplies for the day, and heading out. So it's in and out, make it as simple as possible. And again, this is the depots are the key to understanding Howden's, because they're basically small businesses run with corporate support. That is what Howden's will say about them. These are each small businesses that are owned by Howden's, but the managers and the employees are incentivized as if they're running their own business. The prices are confidential, and this is one of the reasons they don't work with consumers. They work just with the trade. So because the depot managers and the staff at the depot are incentivized on margin, they're also very disciplined about the price that they'll give, right? If there was no incentive They could cut prices as much as they wanted to just to bring in more revenue. So they have to have a business mindset. It's not just about giving the tradesperson they like the most the best price. It's about how can I do make this business profitable. And so it's left up to the depot managers to decide how much and what price they're going to be. So if as you get a recurring local customer, a tradesperson, you might get better terms for them because you know they're going to be coming back. But you have to make that decision based on long-term economics and not just on, I like this guy, I'm going to give him a little break. Now, the starting salary for a depot manager is about £50,000, which in the UK is quite decent. And especially the further you get away from London. And the monthly bonuses are about 5% of the depot level EBIT. So this is after the corporate take. This is after the employee bonuses go out and after any sort of shrinkage or theft or broken pieces. So again, they have an incentive to not break things, right? They have to take ownership for everything that happens inside the depot. And the depot staff get 5% of the depot level gross profit. And these monthly payouts are really strong motivation, as you might suspect. Hey, we need to make sure we get people in the door. We need to advertise. We need to do what we need to do to get people in the door and get their business. And their depot turnover manager, a depot manager, just 2%. So it's an average of 50 years. These are people who are there for the long term. It's not a high frequency turnover type of environment. So as we'll talk about, this is one of the keys with trade business if you're working on a business to business perspective, having those personal relationships, those enduring, knowing who you can rely on really matters to these customers more than just what's the lowest price. So the core advantage or the core focus, I should say, that Howden's has is removing the pain for tradespeople, right? There are other business models, which we'll talk about, that focus on different consumers, but Howden's is specifically focused on the trade. So whatever they can do to remove the pain for the tradesperson. So think about handling design, making sure they always have inventory on stock, having the depots located near the job sites so they're not driving 10 miles away to pick up something and losing an hour, right? The tradesperson wants to get the job done as fast as possible and move on to the next one. That's how they make money. They want to give them the best prices available. So if they had to advertise in the papers, right, they may not have to give the best prices. These are trade only prices, so wholesale prices. And Howden's tradespeople can use that to their advantage when making pitches to consumers. They can say, hey, I can get you warehouse level prices and I'll take my cut on top of that versus you having to go to a local retail DIY where they're going to mark it up because they understand that you don't know what a good price is. They also provide short-term working capital financing. So we'll talk about that as a different business model as well. So typically they offer 60 days. But right now the average is about 50 in terms of how much working capital financing they'll provide to their tradespeople. Again, all these factors go into helping the tradespeople turn their projects faster and make more money. And I'll talk about another flywheel. I love flywheels, like I did with Games Workshop. So I'm doing another one here with Howden's, and there is a virtuous flywheel here. In effect, what happens where happy tradespeople come back that just reinforces the business model and increases Howden's competitive advantages over time. So the UK market, this is their core market. This is their home market. This is the most profitable market, and the market's about 11 billion pounds per year. And Howden's thinks it has about 25% share of the United Kingdom's kitchen and joinery. So joinery for Americans is not a term that we typically use here, but to think about fine woodworking, so finishing, molding, things like that. About 90% of Howden's business is residential, we talked about. And again, 95% of that business is RMI. So think about just refitting your kitchen. Maybe, hey, say you bought a new house and it's not the color you like, the cabinets aren't what you like. You can do a refit for about $3,500. That's the average kitchen refit in the UK. So it's not a huge expense. And I'm kind of jealous, frankly, because every time I get a kitchen remodel quote here in the US, it's that's about a tenth of what I get quoted. So it seems very, very affordable and very attractive to have someone just and refit your kitchen with brand new cabinetry, countertops, and perhaps appliances. So there's a couple different types of UK market operators in the kitchen and joinery space. As we talked about, Howden's is focused exclusively on the trades. So these type of stores are situated mostly in industrial parks. They have low cost real estate. So think about, you know, the industrial areas of the town where the part of town where you live in, the just kind of the not quite exurbs, but a little further away from the city center. The financing again is done with the tradesperson, and vertical integration is key. So it's really important here to have the low cost advantage. And a couple competitors in the UK, but they don't have vertical integration. And that's really where they're struggling is trying to give the best prices and have that assured supply and assured inventory. As a tradesperson, they can't assure that. And so that gives Howden an advantage. They can take share from those competitors. Bigger, well-known competitors in the UK, and these are mostly focused in what we might call in the US strip malls, or where you might find a Home Depot or a Lowe's. These tend to have fancier showrooms. The financing is done with the customer rather than the tradesperson. So there you're running into a situation where what does consumer credit look like? How eager are consumers to use credit, and depending on the interest rates that they're offered. The key competitors there in the UK are Wren's and IKEA. So I think those are two major retail competitors. There's also mom and pop. So these are more bespoke type of outfits. They're typically independent, and they tend to be higher end customers looking for a really kind of unique special job. And the average installation price there is about £10,000. The problem with the mom and pops is that they're subscale operators. And so they don't have a real cost advantage that Howden's has. And we'll talk about how that could be an opportunity for Howden's to grow and take share from the higher end. And then again, about 5% of Howden's business are new home builds. It's not very large, and it really comes from tradespeople who might be linked to the home builder. So given that this is a wide moat presentation, I want to talk about Howden's moat. As you can see here on the left, this is a sketch that I did. It's a idiosyncratic business model, and we'll touch on this in a minute as well. That they look like a distributor in many. They have 300 plus suppliers, plus their own manufacturing coming into Howden's to then be sold into a larger customer base. And they have about 500,000 trade accounts that are currently listed with Howden's. That's a pretty wide consumer base. And the consumer there is a tradesperson. And then those go into about 29 million homes in the UK and France. So they have a distribution type of model. And they benefit from network effects, low cost production, and switching costs. Those are the three things that I think factor into their moat and their B2B focus, which we talked about. Having that relationship driven model with their people in a way that they don't have with consumers. I mean, you think about a consumer buying a kitchen, maybe they do it once every 15, 20 years. But the tradesperson, they're going to run into them all the time, right? They might run into them 3 times a week, 5 times a week, so on, or even more. And so that relationship is much more high touch than it is with the average consumer. And so you might be wondering, okay, how does this model work? If let's say I'm a UK landlord and I want to upgrade the kitchen in my flat so I can charge more rent for the next person coming in. So there's two ways. One way is that, if you're a landlord, you may already have a tradesperson that you like to work with. And the tradesperson can bring you a couple different options, and one of them could be Howden's. And then if you say, okay, yeah, I want to work with Howden's, I like the style of this kitchen, then you would sit down at the Howden's depot, figure out how the kitchen will be laid out. The tradesperson would then go to the Howden's depot to pick up all the materials that they need. It should come in and fit pretty perfectly. There are situations where maybe something broke in transit, but the way they design it is so that they can grab another one and bring it back. These are not highly customized in terms of the woodworking. So Howden's will look at what they have available, and they'll build a kitchen based on that. And most of the fine work is on the joinery side. So that's where the tradesperson comes in and helps figure out, okay, how do I install all these things to have it fit? So that's different than what you might get at a Wren's, where it is customized to your specific kitchen. So if something breaks on the way, they got to rebuild it, and that takes a lot longer. And that's where the tradesperson gets a lot of flack, perhaps from the homeowner saying like, "Hey, why do I have to wait 3 more weeks for delivered?" So there, that's how the typical process works. Now, if you're a consumer and you look at a Howden's Kitchen on Instagram or something like that, and you really like it, you don't have a tradesperson, you can go to the depot and meet with the design professional, or the design professional will come to your house, take all the measurements, then they'll help you find a tradesperson if you don't already have one. So that's how that relationship works, but it has to go through the trades. The consumer can't purchase everything off the lot and bring it home and try to install it themselves. And the idea there is they want that quality perception to stick with their brand. They don't want a DIY person going in, not installing something properly, getting upset, right? They want it. They want the tradesperson to do it because the tradesperson knows how to install things properly. So it's strange to think that a mostly physical business has a network effect, but I do think that there is something to be said for that. We focus mostly on digital network effects, so Facebook, eBay, Uber, perhaps, but I think there's also network effects, and is the idea being the same that as a new node is added to the network, does it increase the value of all the other nodes in the network? And I think that is the case with Howden's. About 85% of their customers are within 5 miles from a Howden's depot. So these thrive in dense environments. And we'll talk about why that was a mistake when they went into France, but they're fixing it. Almost 100% product availability from distribution to depots. And that as they add more depots, they have lower transportation costs between the depots. So if the one in West London doesn't have it, they can get it to East London, right? So the closer that you have the depots located to each other, the better the supply chain works. You have more product availability, and it's an improved offer to the tradesperson. So if the tradesperson is working a job in a different part of London, they know there's a Howden's there to work, right? They don't have to go to their home Howden's and drive it all the way across town. There's another Howden's there they can work with. And as you can see on the right, this is a map of West London and the Howden's location. So it's not far distance to drive between these different locations. Aligned with that is a low cost production, right? So the larger they grow, the more bargaining power they have with their 300 suppliers. So the more business they can put to their suppliers, the more bargaining power they'll have with them. And they also have about 36% of their cost of goods sold are self-manufactured. So they make all of their cabinets in-house. They also have their own brand of appliances called Lamona. And so they can use that as well to challenge some of their suppliers to say, hey, well, if you're not gonna give us the price you want, we can make it ourselves. And having this dense network of these distribution centers, so the depots function as a small distribution center when you think about it. So they have three large distribution centers, and they have what are called cross distribution centers or XDCs, which are kind of in between the major distribution centers and the depot level. And so having these distribution centers, whether it's a depot, a cross distribution center, or a large distribution center close to each other, that really cuts down on transportation costs. It makes their inventory management better, and it makes it more efficient. Then finally, switching costs. So again, for B2B, when we think about a lot of B2B software, which whether it's payroll or HR or payments, right? These things that are B2B tend to be stickier relationships because once they become part of the process, they're harder to get rid of, right? There's a switching cost around. So the same thing is happening here with the tradesperson. So as Howden's over time shows this tradesperson that they are going to get a good deal and they're going to turn their jobs over faster, they're going to come back to Howden's. They're going to prefer to work with them. So unless their customers really demand, say, a Wren's kitchen or an IKEA kitchen, they're going to try to promote Howden's because they'll get better pricing and they'll know that they can turn the job faster. So I do think that as Howden's grows and as it takes care of its tradesperson, those relationships get harder and harder to dislodge. So here's the flywheel I mentioned earlier. So you can see Howden's in the middle, and as you have more spending done at Howden's, that makes happy suppliers. That leads to more depots. That leads to more of its own manufacturing, which means lower costs, better selection. That empowers the depot managers to make better sales, right? That makes better trade pricing. It makes the customer and customer happier, right? The longer, and I've been on the other end of this, right? Where the 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 less time a contractor is in your house, right, disrupting your day-to-day operations, the happier you're going to be, right? And so the faster that Howdens can help the tradesperson finish a job fast, do it right, and move on to the next job, the happier everyone will be. This will lead to more referrals. That leads to busier trade customers. Happy trade customers come back to Howdens, and the process starts over again. So I think that there's a lot of word of mouth. There's a lot of cost savings that happen as Howdens builds its market share. So I think those are three things to watch for, even though they're not, say the network effects and switching costs are not typically found in the builder space. I do think that there's something to be said for that here. So the big question, and we'll talk about this in valuation, is, well, what's the growth outlook? So there's three growth drivers I think that Howdens can employ over the next decade. One is it's in the process of updating its legacy UK depots. So the diagram you saw earlier, that's the new model. The older model was, I would say, more warehousey, right? So if you were a homeowner and you wanted to get a design through them, you might be a little lost in there, right? It's a little bit more industrial. It's not quite as consumer friendly. But now the new UK depots have a kind of a more of a friendly, welcoming environment when you come in. You might have a coffee, right? There might be a couch to sit on. There might be some displays and help you understand what's on offer. And the warehouse is more efficient, right? They've figured out a way to improve efficiency in the back and better digital integration. So tradespeople can now use the app and it's fully integrated with the warehouse on a depot level. And so the demand for this came from the depot managers, right? The depreciation for these updates is to the depot level. So the depot managers see the value in this, and they've been leading this charge. And so they're in the process of updating all of their UK depots, and anything new will have that new format as well. So they see room for about 1,000 depots in the UK, about 871 today. So there's not a ton of growth left in the UK. It tends to happen that these targets for locations tend to bump up over time. I found that with restaurants and retailers, but they tend to be lower ROIC over time, right? Because these are the you're kind of going for the crumbs. You're not going for the core of the cake, right? So these are probably less ROIC once you get past the 1,000 mark. So the growth from the UK is going to be more limited on a depot growth basis. International is really the big opportunity there. So they made a huge investment in France, right? That's been a bit of a mixed bag. They've struggled there. I think what they didn't fully appreciate was what we've talked about here, which was the power of being located in a densely packed area. And we'll see in just a moment the map of France to help you understand what their strategy has turned into. Part of the issue there was they were also having trouble finding the depot level talent to run these new stores, and so that's taken some time to build, and it shows how challenging it is to replicate this business model. They might also they've had a lot of success in Ireland, and so they might also continue to push there. It's a very similar sort of population footprint as the UK, and so they found a very strong correlation between their success in the UK and in Ireland, and so I think they'll continue to grow there. It's also somewhat limited. They can't just grow another 1,000 stores in Ireland. It's a much smaller economy. The US is possible, and I mentioned that when I wrote about them for flyover stocks. I think there's a huge opportunity for this business model in the US. And I think the Washington, D.C. area in particular would be a great opportunity for them because there's a lot of renters, a lot of high turnover real estate. It's also located very close to a timber basket in northern and western Virginia. And so they could set up shop there. I think it'd be a great opportunity, frankly. But I do think they mentioned one of the challenges of doing that is that the US does not have a metric system. And so they would have to redo a lot of their measurements and things like that. And it would take time for them to set it up. And but I think it's a never say never opportunity. But frankly, if they were here in the US, I would be getting a quote from a tradesperson because I like their styles, and I think it would be a great business model here in the US. So you can see here, this is what they're doing in France. So you can see how, if you look at the whole country on the left, you can see how it's very spread out between the north and the south, and that's just not their the core benefit of having this depot network is having them all spread out. You want them more densely packed, and so now they're focused more. You can see in the little circle there that they're focused increasingly on the area around Paris. So now they're getting that density is important, and they're putting more of their locations near and around Paris. So I think that will pay dividends for them over the next 5 to 7 years. Upscaling, as I mentioned, is another big opportunity. So right now, their bread and butter is the good level. So that's between or up to, should say, 4,000 pounds for a refit. So budget friendly. And they have less of a market opportunity, less market share, I should say, at the higher end. So these are, again, that's the stomping grounds of the independent mom and pops that are more bespoke, more boutique. They have a huge opportunity there, again, because of their cost structure. They can offer very high-end type of materials at a better cost than what they might be able to get from a bespoke installer. So Howden's has an opportunity to take market share there. And finally, new product line. So when I first started looking at Howden's in 2023, the they were just doing kitchens, right? And now they're doing bedrooms as well. So it's not quite as large of a market as kitchens, but it shows that there's optionality within the business model. So it's very well aligned with cabinetry, right? So you think about bedrooms, you can see some of the pictures here. It's very similar to what they're doing with kitchens already. It doesn't change their model in the depot. It's just adding another area for different materials, different inventory, but it's also right down the alley for their tradespeople who are already doing a lot of joinery and a lot of carpentry. They have the materials there. All they have to do is just add this to their list, and you can say, hey, if you're a tradesperson, while I'm doing your kitchen, have you thought about upgrading your bedroom? We'll have all the materials there. Here's what Howden's has to offer. We can just throw a couple more flat packs on the van and bring it over and install it, for next week or two, right? That's a opportunity for the tradesperson to upsell. It's an opportunity for more Howden's business. And again, it aligns with the core Howden's model. And so I think they have some optionality there. And so you could see an extension perhaps into bathrooms or other parts of the house where the Howden's model could fit and help. This would be particularly helpful in the UK market where it's really dependent on the kitchen. And now that they can offer other parts of the house, that can increase the revenue per depot.